Hello, am I on yet? Check, check. Am I on now? Yes, you can hear me? Want to make sure that that's true. Yes, you're good in the back too? Excellent. There we go. Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Herbst. I had the pleasure of being Francha's neighbor for 8 years. And this is going to be, we're all going to get through this together, right? Because this is really a celebration of Francha's life, as we all know. And we have some wonderful presenters today. People, some of whom we've just met, and some we've known for a long time. The first thing I want to do is introduce Francha's family who are here, many of whom have traveled from a long way. John Barnard, brother. Where's John? There's John. Hi, John. Right on cue. Mary Barnard, sister. There's Mary.
Hi.
Elizabeth Barnard, sister, and her partner, Steve. Steve Church. And Bob Barnard, brother. Tina Cabot, and who's a cousin with her partner, Tammy Wood. There's Tina. Boy, oh boy, I probably should have brought my cheaters. Jane Barnard, who's a cousin. Is Jane here? There's Jane. Neil Petta, nephew. Neil's back there. Neil has been instrumental in getting a lot of the slideshow stuff put together and the music that you heard beforehand. Thank you, Neil. Who did I miss here? And Jim Barnard, cousin with wife, Barb. Hello, welcome. As we all know, the tribute today, the idea behind the tribute really came from Francha's having so many facets in her life that needed to be talked about and represented. And once you start to open that door, you get a really long list of people that need to be included. And we do have a long list, you can see from the program, but we're going to keep it clipping right along here. And our expectation, we said it was probably going to be a presentation from around 2 to 3, but we're expecting it's going to go more like 3:15. So beg our indulgence beforehand. If anybody does need to leave before then, we completely understand. But we certainly don't want to shortchange Francha Barnard, do we? No. Right. Here's the other thing about this. Well, I have to read because there might be some people here who don't know about all of these facets of Francha's life, and of course you're going to hear from these individual people, but we're going to have people who are talking about her as a teacher, as a librarian, as a volunteer. Every once in a while this is going to happen to me, you're just going to have to get used to it. A political activist, an artist, a poet, a neighbor, a family member, and of course, a cherished friend to so many of us. This program that you can see before you, my initial idea was to get the program together and to run over to Northern Sky where I'm an artistic director and run off a bunch of copies and be done with it. And then I started thinking about it and I texted Elizabeth and I said, Elizabeth, I have this idea that maybe we should have a better program. So yesterday I run over to Elizabeth's house and I say, maybe we should get some better paper, and what do you think about the idea of individualizing them and putting Francha's homemade paper on each one as an individual trademark? And Francha pulled out her stamp. I keep saying this. And Elizabeth pulled out Francha's personalized stamp and said, let's put that on all of them. So then I ran up to Innovative Printing, where Northern Sky does a lot of our business, and I talked to the wonderful people there, Darren and Laura, and I walked in and I said to them, I'm here to do a very fast turnaround print job for Francha Barnard. And they're like, oh, we loved Francha. Immediately, just immediately. And they took me around, we found the stock that we wanted to put this on. They agreed to print it all, and I said, what's the cost gonna be for this? And they're like, it's for Francha, there's no cost. And that's just, it just, there we go again. So anyway, without further ado, let's start our program because I could stand up here for as long as all of these people together and keep going, and that wouldn't be fair to them. So Stephen Titra, who is a good friend of Francha's from way back, you're going to say, I'm sure, 1970s?
No, early 80s.
Early 80s, close enough, is going to sing a song that he wrote. You are welcome.
So, Francha came to an event with a couple of other people from Sheboygan schools, and many of us artists were performing and demonstrating our wares at the university, and it was like a meat market. So we were for sale through the National Endowment for the Arts and Wisconsin Arts Board, and they came to pick artists to come to schools. And Francha and her colleagues talked to me and suggested I come. And that was the beginning of a very long friendship. And one of the songs that I played early on and that I used to open a lot of shows with the students in the programs that I did was this one. And she liked it because she said it's why she believed in books and language, because authors want to tell the world they're here. And the refrain of this song is, tell the world you're living, tell them you're alive. So French is gone, but not really. In all of us, we will continue for a very long time on her behalf. Touch the rain, does it make you smile? Waiting for the sun, you'll be warm in a while. Does it make you wonder, want to know more? Fill your heart with thunder, lift your voice, let it soar. Or tell the world you're living, tell them you're alive, tell the world that you're giving. This old life I tried. Dance with the flowers, does it make you feel good? Watch summer birds sailing over a distant fragrant wood. Does it make you wonder, want to find out? Fill your heart with thunder, oh, lift your voice and shout. Oh, tell the world you're living, tell them you're alive, tell the world that you're giving. This whole life I tried. Touch the hand of friends, does it make you feel warm? You know the greatest joy, your spirit will be reborn. All at once your life will explode like cathedral colored glass. All the mysteries for you will open up. All at last, oh, tell the world you're living, tell them you're alive, tell the world that you're giving. This
presenter is Margaret Philbrick. Margaret, do you want to use the podium?
Sure.
Okay, excellent.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. That tapped into Francha's endless curiosity so well, and how it's impossible that she's gone because she was so alive. And I wrote this poem for Francha, and I wrote a little bit of an introduction about what I loved about her so much. Oh, when she's angry, she is keen and shrewd. She was a vixen when she was in school. And though she be but little, she is fierce. Shakespeare's description of Hermia, as delivered by Helena in the third act of Midsummer's Night's Dream, could be Shakespeare's description of Francha. Particularly the famous line, though she be but little, she is fierce. I admired Francha's directness, candor, and innate kindness. But it was her gift of invitation that I admired most. She wanted you involved in all the things she was passionate about. Within 5 minutes of meeting each other, while she was on a walk with her friend and my neighbor Sue Spitz, she discerned that I loved and wrote poetry. Thus, she invited me to join the small band of poets who share their reflections through a project called Local Lines. I believe it was the first time that I was invited into a creative project or team without vetting, without an interview, without an application, without an audition, without critique. She met me. She discerned what I loved. She invited me into her club. This quality of invitation without first considering one's background, one's awards or accolades, just inviting them out of a common love of art is unique and precious in our resume-crazed culture. I hope to honor Francha's legacy by taking time to stop along the road and meet someone, discern what they love, and then invite them into my circle of artistic interest. And I'm going to keep the local lines going. I told Tracy I'm going to do it in Francha's honor. This poem is called Our Little Weaver. The irony of this poem is I had no idea Francha was a weaver. I didn't know she had a loom in her house until Charles and Jeff told me this. So this is just an amazing irony that this is the way I perceive Francha, and it is more true than I realized. She was a walking weaver, someone said. This sprightly Frogtown Lane dweller, disarming strangers with winsome will and leprechaun wink and gleam, adding one more skein of humanity to her patchwork quilt of personality. She was a weaver of people and words, someone said, extending ripples beyond her sunrise and moonrise kingdom. She found me amidst thimbleberries, pierced me with her needle of direct invitation. Why don't you join our local lines? Without regard for my reputation, creed, or color, she welcomed my words, sprinkled her words with a touch of chicory, another warp for weaving us all together. This tiny but mighty driven spark, flickering and flitting, not long enough, leaving silken threads for all who dare to pick up her needle and tread.
Our next presenter is my partner, Charles Williams. He's going to speak for both of us, even though I've already spoken a lot.
This morning I put a title on this. I'm calling it The Francha Years. In the summer of 2014, Jeff and I were considering buying a house on Frogtown Road in Bailey's Harbor. It was the house next door to Francha's, and we first met her on one of our visits to that property when we were still undecided about it. We lived then about a half-mile away in a log cabin on Chapel Lane, and though we did not know Francha, Jeff recognized her as the woman who sometimes motioned for him to slow down when he was speeding up Frogtown on his way to the theater. And she recognized him because she'd seen him perform at that theater. In fact, when he started to introduce himself that day, she stopped him and exclaimed, "You're Jeff!" Anyway, based on I do not know what, Francha quickly determined that we should buy the house. But we were hesitating, so she embarked on a little campaign to make it happen. Most memorably, she made a stop at our door one afternoon when she was on her daily walk and made a very specific pitch in favor of our buying that house. I was sitting in my chair in Burnt Hollow, that's the name of the log cabin, talking to Jeff, when suddenly and unexpectedly, we heard a loud knock on the door. It was particularly unexpected because I was facing the windows on the front of the cabin, so anyone approaching the front door should have come into my view. I opened the door, and there was Francha, who hadn't cleared the windowsill as she went across the front yard. She leaned forward and said, "I have 2 words for you. Sunrises, moonrises." And she turned, and away she went. She wanted us to know that beautiful sunrises and moonrises over the lake were something we might not have thought about and ought to consider. Well, we bought the house, and yes, the sunrises and moonrises were awesome. But what we gradually learned was that the best thing about living there was the neighbor, Francha. From the outset, it was clear that she would be a good neighbor in the usual sense, happy to check your mailbox when you were away, and then go in and turn on your heat just before you return, alert you to something that looked amiss, like a fallen fence rail or an attic light left on, something like that. On our side, Francha learned that Jeff would help her shovel her driveway if she'd let him, and that I could even look after Nina if she needed me to. But what gradually became apparent was that Francha and Jeff and I were suited to be much more than good neighbors. We were kindred spirits who ought to be great friends. We just needed some time. Well, we had 8 years, and over the course of them, we totally gelled. Indeed, by the time the pandemic arrived, we were already well established among ourselves as a tight little threesome who had achieved an easy and intimate understanding. It did not hurt that we started out agreeing on pretty much all the big things and had also set similar priorities for basic good living. Take time to cook and eat well. Have friends over, spend some part of every day outdoors, and yes, read some poetry. I said we agreed on the big things. Here's a big one: the sky. Almost immediately after we moved in, Francha asked us if we would support her desire to get the town to remove the light in front of our houses, a light that shined annoyingly between us and those awesome moonrises. Francha was a proponent of the dark sky movement, and we were too, so we eagerly signed on. As usual, she took the lead, and she successfully got the town to agree to take the light down. And then, as soon as it was done, at a time when Jeff and I were in Texas for the winter, she sent us an email with an attached picture of a bare light pole. Look, oh look, no street light on the pole. 3 exclamation points. It went away this morning. Happy start to the new year, Francha. Did I mention that we were all foodies? One of the first times Francha entered our house, it was to use our oven. Hers was out of repair, and she needed to bake some cookies for a meeting with one of her groups. She came over to preheat the oven, left, then went back and forth with trays of cookies until they were all done. Then, later in the day, we hardly knew her at this point, she came back again and gave us a small plate of those cookies. That was the first of countless such gifts of food. Through the years, we became accustomed to getting text messages like these. Home, I've got a treat to bring over in about 5 minutes. Or, and now, I mean right now, Asian slaw is coming your way. Or, you ready for pie? Coming over now. And, you home? Ready for rum cake? And over she'd come, and we were delighted. On the morning the networks called the election for Biden, she promptly showed up at our door with a homemade Kahlua-like drink, perfect for a late morning toast. Now, goodies were going back and forth between our houses, you can be sure, but I have to tell you, we could not keep up with Francha. She had this rule for herself that she had learned from her mother. When she returned a food container, she returned it with something in it. We could not keep up. In addition to spur-of-the-moment deliveries of such treats, there was also a considerable amount of sitting down and eating together at each other's houses. Some awfully nice, beautifully laid out dinners in her dining room, but also snacks and drinks in front of the fireplace, hers or ours, and best of all, I think, impromptu meals on each other's porches, with both houses contributing whatever we had at hand. Now, as much as our times together were centered around food, they were centered even more around long walks together, all seasons, any weather. These walks became a given in our life together with Francha, occurring almost daily. Here's another text message from Francha. I'm wondering when you'd like to take our walk later. I'll plan my Cornish hen dinner around the time you choose. I was also wondering if you'd like to walk through town and out along Ridges Road to the beach, or wherever you choose that's safe from hunters. Thanksgiving Day 2020. Usually we walked any of various routes in our neighborhood, which includes some very choice trails at both Bjorklund and the Ridges. But we also set out on occasion for favorite land trust properties or park trails. Here's another text message. So, according to plan, I'll fetch you after senior lunch tomorrow, about 1, to ride up to Newport Park to replace the poems along the poetry trail. That still works for you, right? Francha. All of these walks, all of these drop-ins and dinners were also talks, of course. For us, they were invaluable. Francha had a remarkable capacity to see you, to understand who you were, and to care. Our goals became her goals, our projects, her projects, our interests, her interests. She wanted us to be happy, be well, be successful in all our little endeavors, enjoy life. Jeff and I will be forever grateful for our memories of the 8 years that we will always think of as the Francha years.
Well, now you know why I let him talk for us both. Thanks, Charles. Our next presenter is Susie Cohout, who is a friend, a longtime friend of Francha's since high school, and also a member of the book club.
I met Francha more than 60 years ago when we were in the 9th grade. We were classmates and friends over the school years. I did better when I practiced. Getting together periodically during college, again when we both moved to the East Coast to teach, she to New York State, me to Connecticut, and at Christmas and in the summer when she moved back to Wisconsin to teach. However, my favorite memories of Francha are being old ladies together. I moved to Door County in 1981, so when she retired and moved to Bailey's Harbor, we entered a whole new and much more important phase of our friendship. When I retired in 2006, Francha invited me to join the newly created book club, which she had co-founded with several others. As you all know, Francha never did anything halfway. Her deep love of words and writing meant that a book club was serious business. I'm not suggesting we didn't have fun. Nothing would be further from the truth. But even in a book club, there are rules to be followed. And Francha did her best, not always successfully, to inspire us to follow them. First, choosing the book was crucial. The selector must have completely read it previously. It couldn't be too new, as then there wouldn't be enough copies available to members to read them. It couldn't be part of a mystery or other type of series. Secondly, the book was to be the star of the meeting. Thus, the host should not be serving too fancy a menu. One item, thank you very much. The meeting should not have a theme or tables, including table settings, decorations, etc. Attention must be paid to the book. Finally, joining was a commitment to the group. Members were to read every book, whether they were able to attend or not. Sending in a review and numerical rating in advance was required for meetings that one missed. For those of us who knew her, Francha will always be a part of that book club. In spirit, if not at the table. My elder years' friendship with Francha was saving the best for last. While I sometimes met her for lunch or some other Door County event, my most special times were when we would drive to meet our high school friends Steffi and Judy, usually at Steffi's cottage in Black River in Sheboygan, or to have lunch together in Manitowoc. A highlight was definitely the drive to and from. For 2 hours down and 2 hours back, we would talk politics. National, state, and local. All topics were fair game, and what was said in the car stayed in the car. Then, after solving some of the world's problems on the way down, we'd solve other monumental challenges on the way back. We had our special route that included all the possible views of Lake Michigan that could be managed, and had a favorite spot to stop for coffee on the way down. Even in high school, I was impressed that Francha knew everyone. That hadn't changed. No trip to Manitowoc or Sheboygan was complete without a stop to drop off or pick up something at a friend's house. She knew what she liked and where to get it. Our trips would include stops to buy her special oils and vinegars, her mushroom kits, her lemongrass, or some other product that would be perfect for what she was planning. I'm grateful to have had those special times. I will miss her.
We have a video to play, a very short one. Maybe some of you have seen this before, of Francha promoting the local library.
a bit, and the walls fall away. The ceiling recedes. You're hiking the highlands in Scotland, building the Panama Canal, rolling on a whaler in the Atlantic, sneaking through the garden's secret gate, picking blueberries for Sal. This place can manipulate magic, can carry you away on a deep, cozy chair at the price of zero. This place can bring tears, laughter, fear between the covers in your hands. This place tickles your funny bone, twists your temper, pulls at your heart, and it's all yours. How luscious is that?
And to follow that up is Tracy Opper, who is the local librarian at Bailey's Harbor. Who all knows Tracy? I know Tracy pretty well because I use the library a lot.
And so did Francha, as I'm sure you know. And I must tell you, the chair she was sitting in there, she bought and donated to the library because all of our chairs were a little tall. And it is the most comfortable, popular spot in the library. So if you stop by, feel free to sit in Francha's chair. And Susie, I run 2 book clubs and I would fail her guidelines for sure. Francha was a gift. She was a gift to all of us, and she was certainly a gift to the library. Knowing that I work at the library, you know I saw Francha a lot, often every day. Francha loved libraries and served our little branch in many, many ways. She was an eager volunteer and a valuable member of our library advisory board. Francha was a very busy person, but always the first to offer help when needed. From special projects to handing out crafts at Halloween, in full costume, of course. Sometimes she would merely pop in and say, "Tracy, do you have a pick list for me?" She loved seeing what was being requested from our library. She began and coordinated the local lines poetry, as Margaret said. Features 2 poems from local poets each month. I saw her encourage beautiful poetry from people who didn't even know they were poets. Our last conversation was about keeping local lines going, so I'm glad to hear Margaret is on board, and hopefully other poets will help me do this in honor of Francha. Francha was my mentor and greatest encourager. She always had many suggestions to offer and always kept me up to date on what her beloved Sheboygan Library was doing. She and I shared many reading recommendations over the years, from poetry to novels to books I should read with my son. And if you allow me, I would like to share with you the last book she and I were both enamored with, and I can still hear her sitting at my counter reading it aloud. It's a bit of a poem in itself, as many good children's books are. It's also a little bit silly, which, as the author Philip Steed says, sometimes the biggest, most important emotions in life are best expressed with a little bit of nonsense. The illustrations are wonderful, but I'm just going to concentrate on the words, so you may have to check it out from the library sometime. I'd like to be the window for a wise old dog. I'd like to be the raindrop falling on a turtle shell. I'd like to be the puddle for a big bulldog. I'd like to be the welcoming umbrella of an elephant. But most of all, I'd like to be the window for a wise old dog. And sometimes I wonder, will I ever be the dawdle of a penguin? Will I ever be the waddle of a snail? Will I ever be the tumble of a honeybee? Will I ever be the bumble of a whale? Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know. But I do know that I'd like to be the warm sun blanketing a buffalo. I'd like to be the hollow of an owl's oak tree. And sometimes I wonder, will I never be the feather of a walrus? Will I never be the weather of a wren? Will I never be the scurry of a hummingbird? Will I never be the hurry of a little mouse when the cat sneaks slowly by? Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know. But I do know that I'd like to be the window for a wise old dog who'll look through me and wonder happily about everything she's never been and ever been, joyful and free.
Carol Schmidt is on her way up to the microphone. Carol was Francha's physical therapist and wrote a letter to the Peninsula Pulse that I know many of us had the pleasure of reading, and she's going to share that with us now.
When I was asked to read my letter in the paper, I thought about it and realized I couldn't refuse. I had decided to write something about Francha because she never failed to mention that she had read a letter that I had written in the paper over the years. So I felt it only fitting that she deserved her own letter. A tribute to a friend, Francha. Bailey's Harbor lost one of our own this last week. You might have seen her walking around town, a little lady in all kinds of weather, striding through a town she loved. Francha had her hands, thoughts, beliefs, and convictions in many endeavors. You might have observed her in action at our town meetings over the years, adding her voice and concerns. Oh, and we can't forget her 2 Ps, poetry and politics. Francha was a patient of mine first. I can tell you she was one of my most compliant and determined patients ever in physical therapy. I admired this dynamic woman, and as I got to know her better, I became a friend. When we lose someone we care about, suddenly we have a tendency to play back the last time we were with them. What did I say or do? Did I waste that last precious time? Did I tell them they mattered to me? Tell them, thanks for being my friend? The last time I saw Francha, she was dropping off the last batch of mushrooms she had been growing. You see, we shared a love of growing mushrooms and sharing them. I'm sure anyone who knew Francha was thinking the same thoughts about their last time. I guess there's a lesson here for all of us. You never know when a person that you care about or love will walk out your door and never come back in. It's a reminder to us all, don't take life for granted. So goodbye, my friend, and may the force be with you. You will be missed.
Now Terry Good, our good friend and neighbor.
Hello, everybody. Put it up a little bit. Thank you. Peter Barnard was my 5th great-grandfather, so Francha and I decided that we were cousins, and we often kidded about our common ancestry. In fact, we shared no DNA, but we were closely related in many other ways. We had a wonderful friendship, despite disagreement, one might say because of it. For example, Francha loved poetry. I am not a fan. I know, that's close to blasphemy in Door County. But it served as the catalyst for our most serious discussions, which fostered our friendship. And it afforded me the opportunity to often recite Joyce Kilmer's famous first line to Francha, I think I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree. She knew exactly what I meant, but it did not get in the way of our friendship. Francha tried for 2 years to take a winter clearing class from me, but was lotteried out because the classes were filled with life members. The clearing told her that if she would pay $400 and become a life member, they would guarantee her a seat. She did so and enrolled the next year. It was a logic class that winter. When it was over, she said to me in complete exasperation, "I spent $400 for this?" But it did not get in the way of our friendship. Francha, Pam, and I shared many good times together. Friday night neighborhood cocktail parties. She always had my kind of gin. Dinners at our house, dinners at her house, dinners out. We still owe her one. The Wednesday games group. She loved word games, Quiddler in particular, but said she hated liar's dice because playing it requires lying. The lady doth protest too much. She was very shrewd at playing it, proving that she could and would lie like the rest of us. But it did not get in the way of our friendship. Francha and I shared a special love of Bjorklanden, where she volunteered and where I teach in the summer. She never did take one of my Bjorklanden seminars because she said, "I can't afford another life membership." This time I knew exactly what she meant, but it did not get in the way of our friendship. Francha considered going on a Viking River cruise with the couples of the Wednesday Games group. In the end, she didn't sign up, saying that she would be a fifth wheel. I think there was more to it, but we'll never know. What I do know is that now something has gotten in the way of our friendship, and it has created a void that cannot be filled. So rest in peace now, my good friend, under that lovely Kilmer tree. The couples of the Games group will raise a glass in your memory when on the river cruise next month, somewhere up on the Rhine, near the Lorelei, the place of the small goddess. I will miss you, your cousin Terry. Oh, one more thing, Francha, 6 6s, and you know philosophers never lie.
And now, just for Terry Good, we are going to have 5 poems of Francha's read.
Can you hear me? Well, as you know, Francha was a poet, and she had taught poetry to children in her library in Sheboygan, but she had not really been inspired to write poetry until she retired to Dork County. Once she got here, she participated in various workshops and events for poets, came in contact with her friend Barbara Larson again, who was a wonderful persuader for poetry. And when Word Women was formed by Sharon Auberly and Nancy Raffel around 2009, she joined. And she was a very, very strong member, one who kept us in line, one who kept us aware of who was hosting the next event and so on. And there were rules, yes. She soon joined the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets and began to submit poems to its quarterly newsletter and to the calendar. In 2016, she and I became editors for the 2017 WFOP calendar on the theme of water. Along the way, she became a coordinator of the long-standing Meadows Gallery show at SCAN in Sister Bay. And she began, as you've heard, a new tradition of posting a poem by a Bailey's Harbor poet each month in the Bailey's Harbor Library. She took on the organization of an annual poets retreat and of Art Speaks, a program sponsored by Write On to bring poets to local galleries to write about a work of visual art. Her bountiful energy will be sorely missed among Door County poets and readers. When
she left us, we realized that there were so many things that she had done. We had no idea initially how they would be filled. And thank you so much for stepping up. In her own poetry, she often turned to the natural world of water and wind, trees, birds, foxes, that she could see from her windows overlooking Lake Michigan, or on her frequent walks through the ridges and many, many other places, as we've heard. A visual artist in her own right, she really loved to observe the work of others in any field, whether in politics or fishing, as you will hear in the last poem that we will read to you today. And that was a gift, her capacity to look carefully at each person, at each object that she encountered. With guidance from her sister, Elizabeth, we have chosen 5 poems to represent this part of Francha's life. The readers are members of her poetry writing group, Word Women, and they are Nancy Raffel and Carrie Sherrill, Karen Wilson, Sharon Auberly, and I will be joining them. Nancy?
Before I read this poem, which is very short and was in the 2016 Poets Calendar, I do want to say that another aspect of Francha, she was like a multifaceted diamond. And we worked at Right On Door County to organize the library there. And that has been rewarding work and will continue, but Francha kept us on the straight and narrow with that. This poem is called, it's about winter, and what else do I need to say? But Francha's poem, all I need in this Wisconsin winter that seems determined to walk out at its own slow pace is a single augury, an unmistakable emissary. Sunset after 6, a cardinal's morning mate-searching call, sundrop blooms in a sun-hollow bowl, or best, a foolish winter-hardy robin, orange and brown at the edge of this white world.
Hi, I'm Carrie Sherrill, also one of the Word Women, and feel very privileged to be one of them. This poem was also in the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets calendar. Necklace. Little sapling white pine, barely tall as I am, trunk only round as my extended thumb. You wear a pearl necklace, even so, after last night's windless snow.
A longer poem, Alone in a Pandemic, Directives. Do not allow loneliness to sit in your lap. Eschew empty hours, though sitting still is not necessarily empty. Look to all that is good in your life. It's July. Waves lap the shore, a rhythm for your day. The moon's been particularly gracious lately. You live in a version of nirvana. Your neighbors are a knock away. Far-flung family and friends, the distance of a phone call. Use time to sit in your glider, to watch hummingbirds drink, to read, really read, to make art, music, poetry, to walk beside nature in the height of its prime, to eat meals on the porch, to sleep with all the windows open, to awaken daily to wren song and gull cry. Do not think about fall and winter. They'll arrive when they arrive.
This poem by Francha is called Noisy Nights. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. Noisy nights. If you sleep with a skylight, the vagaries of rain can come close and hard. The finger tap of a shower starting, the popcorn of a steady downpour, the staccato of a sudden deluge. In this house on a bluff above a big lake, most nights wave crash on rock delivers a repeat rhythm, sometimes gentle, sometimes blocking out all other sound. Sleep, for the uninitiated, can be a challenge.
Not too long after Francha started writing poetry, this poem, Weavers, won first place in the Hal Prize competition, which was quite an accomplishment. It's about the Hickey brothers. Weavers. They stand side by side in the low-ceilinged shack, two strong young men practicing an old man's art. Net pulled to line, hold tight, over, around, and through. Gossamer nets hang low between them. Two taut nylon nets stretch waist-high through the room, attached to opposite walls. 10 phrases of 6, then 3 on the float, over, around, and through. Bobbins in hand, they snail pace backwards, catch net to line and tie it tight, eyes never lifting, rhythm unbroken, hours a day, days for weeks. 10 phrases of 6, then 3 on the lead, over, around, and through. Summertime catchers of fish, wintertime menders of nets, from their deft hands grow new webs. Arachne's opus before Athena's ire.
Thank you all. Sherry, hi. Sherry Osterhaus, good friend of Francha's from the Sheboygan years.
In 1981, it was a very difficult time in my life. I moved next door to Francha in a rented home. I remember a friend saying to me, "Where are you living now?" And I said, "Oh, I'm moving into this home on 6th Street. She said, "Oh, you're going to live next door to a librarian. She's single." Immediately I thought, oh my God, it's an old maid librarian. I've got 2 teenage children who are going to make a lot of noise, who are going to be in and out with their friends. Well, it didn't take long to find out there was no old maid librarian. Francha and I spent many, many evenings sitting on the patios of our homes. And if some of you don't know those Sheboygan days, Francha lived in a Sears catalog home. A tiny little place that was absolutely perfect for her. I remember one time she was having her kitchen remodeled, and I went over frequently to see how the remodeling was going. And one day I walked in and I said, Francha, these countertops are really low. She looked at me and said, well, it fit just right for her. We took many, many walks, and that seems to be a familiar thing for Francha. We walked to the Sheboygan Lake, Michigan. We walked to the riverfront. I moved to Milwaukee. We would meet in Port Washington, which was about halfway. We'd walk in Port Washington and then sometimes stop and have lunch or dinner. She moved to Door County. We would meet in Algoma, and we would walk in Algoma. Also sometimes have lunch or coffee. We shared many, many friends in Sheboygan, but I have to admit that all of you were also friends, and I don't even know a lot of you. So Francha had a widespread community. We had dinners together, we had holidays together. She came to my grandchildren's weddings. And one time we had a very good friend of ours who was dying of cancer. And Chaz didn't want to die alone, and he asked me if I would come and stay with him for his last few weeks of his life, which I did. I took care of Chaz, and Francha took care of me. You know, when I was thinking about it though, we didn't have a lot in common. We certainly could not talk politics, but she could talk that with my husband. We certainly couldn't talk education because I had never been in education, but she could talk that with my husband. We shared the same faith, but she didn't practice her faith, and I definitely did. So I was always telling her, Francha, I'll say a prayer for you. And she'd give me that look. But then the time came when she said, would you please pray for me, just a few years ago. Reading, we both read a lot. I used to read novels, mysteries, espionage, that type of book. You know, there were stacks of books around Francha's home everywhere, but I'm not sure what she really read. We went to the John Michael Kohler Art Center. She would stand and read the descriptions on the wall that described what you were looking at. Me, I would just stand in front of that object and contemplate the object. Took us forever to get through an exhibit. I had children and grandchildren. I had 4 children and eventually 8 grandbabies. She had none, but she was always so generous to mine, and they all think of her very closely, part of our family. You know, when I think about it, I'm really not sure why we became such dear friends, but we were, and it worked. And she always knew I was there for her, and I always knew she was there for me. Now, I always called Francha my little friend, because she was my little friend. For all of you poets in this group, you're going to have to forgive me, but I had to try to write a poem about Francha. My little friend. She was tiny in stature, but lofty in soul. She had energy abundant, which showed to us all how she gave of herself for her beliefs and her passions. Not one could surpass her undying compassion. She once told me, I am the size of a 4th grader, yet none of more height would ever underestimate her. She was like the energy bunny, dipping tiny fingers in projects. She gave of herself without question and certainly with minimal objection. Her love of life came from deep within. I admit, she sometimes made my head spin. She never gave up on life on this earth, fighting the battle, even sometimes with mirth. What I did learn from my little friend, life offers so much if you only contend that you can do anything, if you will only cling to your strengths as you go through the night, always knowing that you'll shine in the light. My little friend that I so greatly miss, I love you, sweet Francha, and only wish I could say thank you for all from throughout the many years that reminded me of you. But have no fears, because you'll be with me for always, even through my tears.
Doing double duty here. I just have to set up this two-song presentation by telling you that in 2016, when we had only been living for 2 summers in the house that Charles described right next door to Francha, over the years it became absolutely customary for us to text one another and say, something going on over the lake. Look at the sky, look at the moon, look at the stars, look at the whatever it was. And on July 6th of 2016, I looked out and it was already dark, and I saw Francha standing by the rail. And of course I opened the front door and wandered out to find out what Francha was observing, because I knew it would be of something of interest to me too. And I said, "What you looking at, Francha?" And she said, "Oh, it's so beautiful, I'm just celebrating my 70th birthday." And we didn't know at that time that July 6th was Francha's birthday. And I said, "Francha, come on inside. Let's have a nightcap, and I'll sing you a song for your birthday." Might have been presumptuous of me, but I offered it, and she accepted it. And I sat down and sang her a Rodgers and Hart song called "Quiet Night." And I'm going to, I did a little arrangement of that with a song that I always think of paradoxically as both a very mournful but hopeful farewell. bound to leave you away, you rolling river, oh Shenandoah, I'll not deceive you away. I'm bound away on this very quiet night. Such a truth is, I couldn't decide which of those two songs to sing, so I thought I'm just gonna put them together. Hi, Judy. There's Judy. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. Am I? Whoa.
You're good.
I had been one. I am Judy Negrelli.
Just make sure you kind of get up there. There you go.
I am Judy Negrelli, a friend and colleague of Francha's, and I'm here to talk about her as an educator. Francha dedicated her 30 years plus years and career to sharing her love of literature, especially with children. As a librarian, teacher, and media specialist, beginning at Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, and then at 5 elementary schools in the Sheboygan Area School District. I would often stay for her weekly sessions with my 3rd graders. She would have an analogy on the board so the kids would start thinking and settle down for class. And I always enjoyed their interactions. She was so amazing with them. It kind of reminds me of her Art Speaks program in Door County. She started many creative writing groups of 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to encourage and stimulate the kids' creativity through language, which also promoted their talent and self-esteem. On a larger scale, she was a major coordinator and grant writer who brought numerous artists and residents to Sheboygan to integrate arts into the curriculum. One project dear to her heart was when she brought Stephen Tetra to Jackson for several weeks to teach about creative writing with each class. The end result was this collection of poetry which Francha put together. Don't worry, I'm not reading all of it. But every single child, every single teacher was involved. And she, I didn't remember to tell you, the connection of weave your web of wonder, cast your net of dreams. Look how clever, Francha did that. Francha was also an inspiration to her colleagues. Here are some words of praise and fond memories of her from us. A true, strong, and caring soul. Always engaged with genuine interest. She played a big part in my daughter's writing career. A wonderful presence. I can still hear her tell my students to hold their treasured books carefully on their way back to class. She inspired us to explore authors, illustrators, literary genres that we might not otherwise have done. Always complimentary, such a sweetheart. She had an amazing effect on us. She was a bright light to all of us. It's hard to imagine that bustling little headstrong person not with us. I'm sure she will shake things up wherever her spirit dwells. Farewell, dear friend. You made the world a better place in so many ways. I am sad, but a better person for knowing you. Just the fact that she will be remembered so fondly is a testament to her life. My heart is heavy, but truly happy to have known Francha. Over the years, our friendship grew and we enjoyed concerts, plays, and meals together. She graciously invited me to Bailey's Harbor when she still lived in her charming old cottage. One of the treats of visiting her was how she loved to plan and prepare our meals. I was glad to receive it. Each year, she'd call me in February and tell me to mark my calendar so we could go to the jazz performances at Bjorklanden in July. We missed it by 3 days this year. We would often go to shops and galleries, and of course, bargains unlimited. Walks, and many walks and talks. It was hard to keep up with her. The last time we were together was this past 4th of July weekend. When she heard I didn't have any plans, she thoughtfully invited me up. She was her spunky old self. She had every meal and activity planned, including watching the parade. As we walked up and down Frogtown Road, every car, friends and neighbors pulled over to talk to her. So thank you, dear Francha, for touching our lives. Like the wisdom of the pebbles spreading ripples across the water, Francha's life has had far-reaching effects on all of us. We all learn from her, always the teacher. Now, close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Imagine her warm smile and cheery voice. You know she would scold all of us for making such a fuss about her. It's true.
Barnard, Francha's younger brother.
Yes, I was Francha's the youngest brother, and we had a complicated relationship, and I think that's probably been brought up by the force of her personality and my contrariness. But I was sort of a lost teenager, and she sort of threw me a lifeline. I came up in the summer and went to what came to be known as the hippie farm near Valmy, where she bought a house with 2 priests from Milwaukee and Chicago, and they refurbished this house. And of course, her vision, dominated its transformation. And I came up there for a few weeks and scraped and painted and mowed the lawn. And I sort of watched this transformation of this old farmhouse into sort of this vision and this wonderful imaginary place where the walls were all painted with cereal boxes by Keith and Carter. And I got the chance to paint a tree and a sun on one of the walls. Anyway, it became sort of a touchstone to me, and I remember this transformation of this farmhouse to this day. I was trying to remember what year it was, because my memory of the past is sort of poor. And so I remembered she loved Isaac Hayes. And so I looked and I found on the internet that Shaft came out in 1971. So that is the year that she was working on building that house. And she thought to remember how moved I was by that experience, and she gifted me her 4 Keith and Carter paintings, which she had on her walls for all those years. And that's a short memory of Francha.
Hello, Gloria.
Hello, Jeff.
Gloria is going to share a poem from a book called How to Love the World, Poems of Gratitude and Hope.
Plus a little bit more than that. I just have to say thank you to the family and to Jeff for, I'm just sitting here thinking, weren't we all so lucky to be this woman's friends? Okay, last February, Francha invited me a friend, to lunch. I brought cookies to share, and I brought a copy of this book, a book I had bought at the clearing, filled with poetry, poems of gratitude and hope, many written during the pandemic. I thought even a poet might like to read some poems of gratitude and hope. Francha and I had a lovely lunch and lots of laughs. I showed her some of my favorite poems. She looked in the book and said, "Oh yes, I know this poet, I know this poet." The next day, she sent me a message. "Oh, thank you so much," she said, "for bringing this book into my life." And she pointed out a few of her favorite poems. One is this one, which I have abridged, by Jane Hirschfield, a poet that she knew of. "Today, when I could do nothing, I saved an ant. It must have come in on the morning paper, still being delivered to those who shelter in place. A morning paper is still an essential service. I am not an essential service. Ant, alone without companions, whose ant heart I could not fathom, how was your life? I wanted to ask. I lifted it, I took it outside. That first day when I could do nothing, contribute nothing beyond staying distanced from my own kind, I did this. I think you'll never look at an ant in the same way again. And a true story, you can't make this up. Yesterday, I was with a friend and she said, "Gloria, you've got an ant on your shoulder." She brushed it off and it landed on the table. I immediately bent down and picked it up. And she said, "What are you doing? Are you taking that ant outside?" I'm not going against Francha's wishes. Anyway, after sharing her poems in this email, she went on to say that I can see this is a book that doesn't belong on my bookshelf. This is a book that I want to have close at hand. So it should not have surprised me that in July, when she asked her dear neighbors to take her to the hospital because she wasn't feeling well, as she climbed into their car, she had this book clutched in her hand. The book went to Door County Medical Center with her. It went on to Bellin Hospital, and it was returned to her sister Elizabeth, along with Francha's belongings after she had died. Elizabeth, who did not know me, who knew nothing about this book, in her sisterly wisdom, decided that this book needed to stay with Francha. And she asked the funeral home to tuck it in alongside Francha as they prepared her for her final journey. This is overwhelmingly meaningful to me and will stay with me all my life. But I didn't want to end on this page for you. So I want to tell you the rest of that email from February and what she said. After talking about the poet, she said, "It was a bit brisk as I walked to the library this afternoon after shoveling my driveway and the guy's front sidewalk and the guy's driveway. But I just didn't want to come inside. I remember so well how I felt as a child. I was a real year-round outside kid." And so that is how I'm remembering my dear friend Francha, a poetry-loving, real outside kid. Thank you.
I guess I'm gonna have to count on you, Gloria, to shovel our walk now. Ralph Murray is going to share a letter that he wrote to the pen pals. Thank you, Ralph.
You know, they say that opposites attract, but I think it's true. It turns out that Francha and I were not quite so opposite as we were both imagining when upon our meetings, because it was not a relationship made in heaven by any means. But we very slowly became fast friends in spite of ourselves. Our late friend, Francha Barnard, for her part, knew where she was going. And if you chose to stand in her way, though she may have been just a fraction of your height and weight, she might tell you where to go as well. And no, I won't go for the obvious rhyme by suggesting to hell, but she might have thought it if she'd never have said it. A keen competitor and consummate cooperator, she got things done. On a typical morning, let's say by 10 o'clock, she'd accomplished more than I, for instance, might in an average week. And she'd keep it up until 10 at night, and all with no hope of compensation, and too often without thanks. We come to depend on a person like that, to take her for granted. Now that she sleeps, we'll soon be awakened, I think, to just how much she did for us. And I mean for all of us, yes, even those who chose to stand in her way. Francha Barnard, for her part, has earned her rest.
And good, again, a wonderful neighbor and friend to Francha.
Also a member of the book club, and I'm the one that violates all the rules. Francha was the Energizer Bunny come to life. I should use that line too. All she needed was the long pink ears and the drum. The energy level was already there, and she was always walking, heading somewhere. There were so many worthwhile organizations in Door County to which she devoted her time and energy. On the rare occasion when I heard her lament how much she had to do and that she had just added some new task to her already long list, I would reply, you could always just say no. And she would give me that Francha look. Hopefully you all know the look, and I'm not the only one that was the recipient of it. The expression of disbelief that you had actually said what you just said, or even worse, that you actually believed it. In this case, how could I possibly think that no was even a word in her vocabulary if someone or some group needed her help? I'm going to address a few of her volunteer activities, starting with Scandia Village. For about 12 years, Francha and I, along with Nancy Nordgren, who was unfortunately not able to be here today, have been the art project team at Birchwood, the special needs unit at Scandia Village. My husband Terry is the fourth person on the team. He creates note cards out of the residents' artwork. Every Wednesday, with a few exceptions, we work with 8 to 10 residents for an hour's worth of painting. Francha would give each resident special attention, helping with their paint color selection, their brush strokes, when to stop, praising their efforts, and making them feel for that hour that they might truly be the next Picasso. After each session has ended, the residents' artwork is then displayed, and Francha was always the one who arranged it artistically on the bulletin board in the hall at Birchwood. Francha's efforts at SCAN were not confined to the art project. She regularly visited 1 or 2 residents each week. She helped with the art gallery displays and was an integral part of the Meadows Art and Poetry event each year. She was also a frequent shopper at Bargains Unlimited. She always said they're going there Wednesdays after art was her reward. I am sure bargain sales have plunged since her death. But most indicative of how she felt about Scandia Village is that it is where she had planned to spend her last years. She even had her name on the list for an apartment in the Meadows for when she might need it a few years down the line. She knew that Terry and I expect to live there eventually as well, and we used to joke that in our 80s and 90s, we would still be running the Birchwood Art Project, but we wouldn't have to go outside to get there. Bjork London was another organization lucky enough to be on her volunteer list. For years, she gave chapel tours at the Lawrence University's Bjork London campus in Bailey's Harbor. She even had her own key, and if you've ever seen the key, you know it was almost as big as she was. She covered the history of the chapel and gave detailed stories about the many murals that adorn the inside walls, concluding each tour with the ringing of the chapel bell. Also, having been a librarian in her earlier life, it was only natural that she helped them organize their library and tidied it up as needed. She recently sorted through about 15 boxes of books left to the library there by a former Lawrence University professor. She also loved helping them decorate the Bjorklunded Lodge at Christmas time. And each year she took a class there, usually in poetry or art. In fact, she'd been scheduled to take a class just this previous week in poetry writing. Given her love of Bjorklund, it is only fitting that there is now a beautiful bench in her memory placed near the chapel on its own patio. A plaque will soon be placed on the bench early next week that says, "In memory of Francha Barnard, dear friend and amazing volunteer." I hope that somewhere along the line you have an opportunity to see the bench, have a seat, and to think of Francha. Many thanks to her friend Mark Franke for his beautiful craftsmanship and to the group of friends who donated the bench. Another of her volunteer activities involved the Ridges Sanctuary in Bailey's Harbor, and you'll have a chance to see that later, this beautiful place later this afternoon. She was a regular weekly tour guide at the Ridges Upper Range Light. She did the Sunday tour since she figured that might be the hardest tour guide slot to fill. In addition, she filled in wherever needed, helping at their annual waffle breakfast, the Ridges annual meeting, and other special occasions such as their Christmas events. In short, she pitched in wherever help was needed. One of the big loves of Francha's life were cats, her own and those cats of others. When one of her earlier cats died and the house was devoid of a four-legged furry creature, she said she felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the house. That void was then filled by Nina, who despite her cantankerous nature was loved dearly by Francha. Francha certainly played an important role in our cats' lives. Our indoor cat Bella and her predecessor Bailey were very familiar to her. If we were going to be gone for a night or two, Francha was the one who came in to feed and water the cats and sift out the litter, etc., and give the cat a lot of TLC. She also fed our outdoor feral cat population on those occasions, and in keeping with the trap neuter return policy that we follow, she claimed one of them for her own and paid for his neutering. She named him Tux because his black and white coloring looked like a tuxedo. I may be the neighborhood crazy cat later, but she was my assistant. These are just a few of her volunteer activities and good works. All of them have lost a good friend as well as a volunteer. And if you're looking for a concrete way to pay tribute to her memory, maybe you can find just one more good cause to give your time to, and yes, your money. Maybe you could even adopt a cat. I know Francha would approve. In closing, I'm going to quote an old Chinese proverb, if I can get through it. An invisible thread connects those who are destined to meet, regardless of time, place, and circumstance. The thread may stretch or tangle, but it will never break. Looking at the people here today, it is quite clear that Francha had invisible threads connected to many people and organizations, and those gathered here are just the tip of the iceberg. I would like to think that those invisible threads the little weaver wove are not broken even by her death, but will continue to exist as long as we keep her memory alive in our hearts and minds and in the good works we can all do for our communities.
Francha's sister, who has been our next door neighbor, and we have loved having you here.
Thank you. The feeling's mutual. Hello, dear friends of Francha's. How y'all doing? Getting through it okay? Our family is deeply honored to be here. Let me all give you a big hug. It's so hard to let Francha go. I'd like to just savor one more minute, just 1 minute to just take in all the love I'm feeling here for Francha. And so I'm gonna take a deep breath if you'd like to do that with me. And just remember Francha and cherish her in your heart. I don't think I will ever experience a moment like this again in my life. There are so many people to thank for this day of celebration who have guided, contributed, and in some way made this day for Francha possible. For someone who said she didn't want a memorial service. I hope she's smiling down at us right now. No matter who we contacted from Sister Bay to Sturgeon Bay and all points in between, everyone without exception knew Francha in some very significant way and had a Francha story to tell me. I want to thank, first of all of my family, Bob, Mary, Steve, Jim, Barb, Jane, Tammy, Tina, Neil, John, for being here. It is so good to be together again. Thank you, speakers, readers, and performers. This has been an event to remember. Thank you for sharing your gifts and talents. Thank you, Jeff, for facilitating today's program and bringing your professional stamp to this major production. I especially want to thank my three musketeers, John, Neil, and Steve. John is our brother, whom Francha named as the trustee of her estate. Very suddenly, John has had to rise to the occasion of assuming financial responsibility for Francha's property. And he is negotiating this with firmness of purpose. That includes this event today. Let's give John an applause. Thank you, John. My son Neil is my second musketeer. Francha loved her nieces and nephews. And I am so proud of you, Neil, for being here to represent your generation, Generation X, which you seem too young to be a part of. Your youthful vitality and technical expertise, your strength and focus and willingness to help is deeply appreciated. Be sure to see Francha's slideshow at the Ridges. Neil put this together with all your photos, all the friend photos with Francha. It's very touching to see. If you go to the Ridges, it'll be on display on a monitor. My third musketeer is the love of my life and my southern gentleman from Raleigh, North Carolina, Steve Church. He has not left my side since I got a call from PA Emily at Bellin Hospital in Green Bay on July 22nd at 4 a.m., who unfortunately had to tell me that Francha was actively dying. Steve, you have put Francha's family first and her friends since that moment, and I am very grateful to you. And for all of those unable to be here who have physical limitations or live too far away, thank you for being a part of Francha's life. And a special shout out to Katie Krause at the Ridges, who couldn't be here because she is setting up for Francha's reception later today from 4 to 6 that you are all invited to. Francha, we're trying hard not to cry over your death. And we're trying very hard to celebrate your life. But my goodness, what a loss and void you have left for so many. Dear sister, cousin and friend, best friend of everyone here, you will never be forgotten.
And we will close out this tribute. Thank you guys so much for coming, and goodness gracious, this is hugely helpful for me to hear from all of you, so I hope it was helpful for you as well. And thank you, Stephen, for your contribution and for singing another original, right?
Yes. This song is half of it is the song that I wrote for her retirement party, and I thought I should put on the tuxedo jacket that she insisted I buy at Bargains Unlimited about 10 years ago, and it still sort of fits. We were in there as we every year when I came, we would go there because that was part of her duty to take all people there to help contribute. Anyway, she saw this tux and she said, "This is you." And I said, "No, it isn't." I said, "Is there one in denim?" She said, "No." So she made me buy it, and I thought it would be perfect to wear in this final thing. The other thing that I need you to do is to help me sing this last song. Even though you don't know it yet. The chorus says, "The world is a better place because of you." And the contingent that isn't here today is even much greater than all of us put together. It's the hundreds, perhaps thousands of students she touched in her long career. Don't underestimate the power that she had over children, instilling in them a passion for literature. God help us if as a country we lose the arts and we lose people with heart. I can't even begin to tell you how kids beamed after working with her and loved books and words and language. You know, we all try our best at writing or doing creative things, but if we don't pass it on to the next generation, we're doomed. So, above all, in my heart, I want to thank her for what she did for children for 30 years. Hundreds, thousands of them. And the exponential growth of that kind of tree in the world from those little hearts and minds, to me, is her greatest gift, though I certainly loved everything everybody said, and I think we need to give Jeff another big hand for his effort. So, as I said, this song was written, at least half of it, for her retirement party some years ago. And the chorus, I'll teach you, and it would do all of us good, I think, if we all lifted our voices and sang this chorus together, and it goes like this. This world's a better place because of you. We're more complete for knowing you because of you. So when that comes around a couple of times, sing it. Practice it one time. Just so I can practice it less. This world's a better place because of you. We're more complete for knowing you because of you. Remember, this was for her work with the kids. So many faces, so many names, so many children, no two ever the same. Over all these years, you've given them so much, with a kindness of guidance and a gentle touch. Here's your part. This world's a better place poetry. Words from your heart and the heart, wisdom and modesty. You dwelt in nature's magic. You heard the secret songs of birds. Without pretense, you knew just how to make words mean more than just words. Sing the chorus again. This world's a better place because of you. We're more complete for knowing you. You spent your life with purpose and service for the good. We'll follow as best we can, as we know you would want us to. Sing the chorus again. This world's a better place for knowing you. This world's a better place because of you. So now we say farewell. We're certain we'll meet again. Sweet, sweet, dear Francha, we'll miss you until then.
Thank you again, everybody, for coming. I apologize for my inaccurate timekeeping, but as I said, I think I don't know how we would have not said what we said today. So thank you, and do head up to Bailey's Harbor for the reception if you can at the Ridges. We would love to see you all there. I know that the family has decorated some of it with some of Francha's artwork and her paper making, and so it'll be a chance for us all to socialize and to continue to celebrate Francha. So thank you, and thank you.